She dragged my teenage niece out of the neighborhood pool in front of everyone, neighbors' kids. Even the lifeguard froze. She waved a printout of HOA rules like it was scripture and said, "Cover her up or get her out." I still remember the sound of Junie's towel dropping, the gasps, the silence. Clarissa Benwell thought she was protecting community standards that day. She had no idea she was destroying her own throne. I'm Reuben Wakefield. I moved to Lake Maribel Preserve 6 months ago. Nice houses, trimmed hedges, and an HOA president who believed her clipboard gave her divine authority. I'd spent 16 years as a municipal compliance officer in Nashville. Rules are my day job. I know which ones are real and which ones are just power plays written on fancy letterhead. That day at the pool, Junie was 15. She'd been through hell after a car accident left her scarred and terrified of crowds. Her therapist said swimming would help. So that afternoon, watching her laugh with other girls in the pool was the first real joy I'd seen in her eyes in months. And then Clarissa showed up, coral blazer, sunglasses, voice like a megaphone in a church. She accused Junie of inappropriate attire. The girl was wearing a modest two-piece with a high waist and clear straps, nothing you wouldn't see at a school swim meet. I stepped forward before Junie could crumble. "That rule you're quoting," I told her, pointing at her paper, "doesn't legally exist." Clarissa blinked hard, her lips tightening. "Excuse me?" "No record of vote, no filing with the county, no quorum at the March meeting," I said. "That rule is void." Behind me, my nephew Arlen, Junie's older brother, crossed his arms. He'd flown in for a visit that morning, still wearing sunglasses on his head. He didn't say a word, just watched Clarissa. That's the moment she realized she'd picked the wrong family to humiliate. But Clarissa didn't back down. She gestured toward the clubhouse. "We'll be issuing a behavioral citation. Your niece's conduct will be documented." I felt Junie's fingers clutching the towel like a lifeline. I kept my voice steady. "Do what you have to," I said, "and I'll do what's legal." The next morning, a paper was taped to my front door. No envelope, no timestamp, signed by Clarissa herself. Violation of Community Standards, Article 7. I laughed when I saw it. Article 7 had been repealed last year. So I walked into the Magnolia Room during the board's morning coffee meeting. Clarissa sat at the head of the table like a queen at her court. I told her calmly, "Article 7 no longer exists." She didn't even look up. "Then consider it enforced under Addendum 3.1.2, she said. I leaned forward. The same addendum that was never voted on, never recorded, and never filed. For a second, her hand froze above the keyboard. Eloise Carter, the treasurer, glanced at me nervously. Clarissa just snapped her laptop shut. "We're not discussing this here." "Perfect," I said. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't the only one keeping records. By the end of that week, I wasn't the only one she targeted. The couple across the street got fined for a garden flag they'd had for years. Another woman was cited for leaving her trash bin out for an extra hour. Clarissa was tightening the leash, isolating me by punishing anyone who talked to me. Classic HOA warfare. But she underestimated people. When they start seeing the same pattern, unfair warnings, fake rules, they get curious. Neighbors started knocking on my door asking me to check their notices. Each one had the same nonsense addendum number. I started documenting everything. Clarissa thought she was burying me in paper. What she didn't realize was she was handing me her own rope. A few days later, I spotted Eloise, the treasurer, walking near the lake. She clutched her leather planner like a shield. I called out, "Morning, Eloise." She jumped. I said, "You've been busy. Clarissa has a lot of new initiatives." She laughed softly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Some of them not exactly legal," she whispered. That was all I needed to hear. Over the next week, I kept gathering evidence, old bylaws, timestamps, neighbor complaints, but I was getting tired. Tired of the letters, the whispers, the constant watching. One night I stood by the window and thought, maybe I should just move. Maybe this place wasn't worth the fight. Junie hadn't smiled in days. I kept asking myself, am I making it worse for her? Was I the problem now? Then I heard her crying in her room, whispering to herself, I didn't even do anything wrong. That sound killed the doubt. No, this wasn't about me being stubborn. It was about a child being shamed for existing. I promised her mother I'd protect that confidence like a spine, and I wasn't about to break that promise for some clipboard tyrant. So I doubled down. I watched Clarissa from afar every Wednesday morning at a cafe called the Poorhouse. She called it her office hours unofficially. That's where she met residents and handed out documents like Holy Writ. One morning I sat 2 tables away. She arrived right on time, coral blazer silver HOA pin, and pulled out a slim folder. I pretended to type on my laptop while watching her slide papers to a man named Ben Talley, the same neighbor she'd once forced to remove his solar panels. He signed something, she smiled, and he left. When she wasn't looking, I caught a glimpse of the folder Addendum 4.2.4, Enforcement Discretion Expansion. My stomach turned. That's how she did it, writing herself permission slips. That night I called a friend at the county registrar's office. "Can you check if anything labeled Addendum 4.2.4 has been filed by Lake Maribel HOA, I asked. After a pause, she said, "Nothing. Doesn't exist." Bingo. A few days later I found Eloise again at the community garden. She wasn't planting anything, just kneeling there, gloves spotless, pretending. I said, "You missed a good show." Clarissa was at the Poorhouse passing out unfiled rules again. Eloise froze. "I'm not the board attorney," she murmured. "No," I said, "but you're the treasurer. You know when things get filed and when they don't." Her voice cracked. She told me it was temporary, that we'd formalize it later. "Later never comes with people like her," I said quietly. "And if this keeps going, you're all liable." That's when she finally looked me in the eye. "There are no timestamps," she whispered. "No signatures. Some dates were backfilled." "That's not poor organization," I said. "That's fraud." She hesitated, then said, "I still have last month's digital draft on my laptop. Clarissa used it before we even approved it." That was the moment everything clicked. I didn't need internal documents. I just needed a time-stamped email proving Clarissa enforced a rule before it existed. That night I got the email from Eloise. Subject line: draft only, not finalized. Sent 2 days before Clarissa's first citation. I stayed up until dawn building my case. Photos of notices, timeline, charts, the fake addendum, all neatly labeled. Then I started drafting a petition. According to HOA bylaws, if 10% of residents signed, we could demand an emergency public meeting. By the next evening, I had 11 signatures. I sent an email to every homeowner. Several citations have been issued under an unratified policy Addendum 4.2.4. This is a violation of HOA procedure. A public meeting is requested. Then I sent Clarissa her own message. No attachments, no explanation, just the subject line. "We're not afraid of your paperwork anymore." She didn't reply. But the next morning her car slowed in front of my house. She didn't get out. She just sat there staring. Friday afternoon I got a text from Eloise. "Meet me behind the chapel. 4 Husro. Come alone." The chapel sat just outside HOA boundaries. No cameras, no committees. When I got there, Eloise looked exhausted. Hair undone, eyes red. She didn't bother with pleasantries. "You're putting me in a difficult position," she said. "You asked me to come," I reminded her. She sighed and opened her planner. Taped to an index card was a USB drive. "I've been backing up Clarissa's files," she said. "Original drafts, real vote logs. She's been altering records, backdating approvals, removing dissenting votes, even editing minutes before posting them." She handed me the drive. Her hands shook, but not from fear this time. From relief. When I got home and opened it, I knew we had her. The files showed everything: the fake vote, the forged quorum, the doctored meeting notes. I uploaded them to a cloud folder labeled HOA Evidence and scheduled an email to every resident set to send Sunday evening 24 hours before the next board meeting. I also made a private copy for one more person, my nephew, Judge Arland Wakefield. He'd quietly agreed to visit that night, not as a judge, but as a concerned relative. Monday came fast. The community hall filled up 51 homeowners, more than half the neighborhood. Clarissa arrived in her coral blazer, still pretending nothing was wrong, but I could see it in her eyes she'd read the email. I stood. "Before we begin, I have a formal policy challenge," I said, holding up the signed petition. "Under Article 2, Section 6, I'm requesting immediate review of enforcement actions taken under Addendum 4.2.4, an amendment that was never ratified, never posted, and never filed." The room buzzed. Clarissa forced a smile. "That's a serious accusation," she said. "One I suggest you withdraw before this meeting becomes disorderly." "Then let's stay orderly," I said and nodded to Ben at the back. He dimmed the lights. The projector flickered on. The first slide appeared 6 residents' names beside their citations, everyone referencing Addendum 424. Next slide. Eloise's email time-stamped marked draft only. Then a comparison of the meeting minutes, Clarissa's version, and Eloise's untouched original. My laser pointer circled the backdated vote. This board member, I said, was out of state when his vote was recorded. Gasps filled the room. Clarissa's face drained of color. She turned toward her board, but they avoided her eyes. "This is a distortion," she snapped. "Board consensus was obtained verbally." "There's no record of that," I said calmly. "And the HOA's own policy requires every new rule to be posted within 48 hours. Nothing was ever posted." I switched to the final slide, a photo of the maintenance shed notice board completely blank. Silence. Then Arlen stood. "I'm not here as a judge," he said, "but I've spent a lifetime studying procedural law. What I see here is a pattern of manipulation and fraud. This community deserves transparency." Clarissa's voice broke. "You're a judge." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Eloise rose from her seat. "Clarissa," she said evenly, "you forged a vote in my name." The crowd erupted. Neighbors started shouting, "You fined us for mailbox flags, you made me rip out my garden, you threatened lawsuits over leash lengths." Clarissa shouted over them, "I acted in good faith, I did what was best for this community." "No," I said, stepping forward. "You did what was best for your control." A man in the back called out, "At least he follows the law." The crowd laughed, then clapped. Ben placed a motion slip on the table. "I move to suspend Clarissa Benwell as HOA president pending independent review." "I second," said Teresa, her voice firm. The vote wasn't even close. Hands rose across the room. Clarissa stood frozen, microphone trembling in her grip. Her allies stared at the floor. Eloise stepped forward, took the HOA binder from Clarissa's hands and placed it on the table. Clarissa didn't resist. She just let go. It was over. No shouting, no gavel slam, just the quiet collapse of a paper throne. I didn't feel joy, just relief. The kind that comes when you finally breathe after holding it for too long. Later that night I walked outside. The air smelled clean for the first time in months. Across the street, the couple with the garden flag were already rehanging it. Teresa was walking her dog with the same leash Clarissa once condemned. Through the clubhouse window, I saw Eloise, now interim president, already drafting public notices for the next election. For the first time, they'd actually be public. And me, I just stood there under the streetlight listening to the sound of kids laughing at the pool. 2 weeks later, Junie went back for the first time. She wore the same swimsuit. No one said a word. She swam until the sun went down. People think HOA fights are about fences and mailboxes. They're not. They're about dignity. Because rules mean nothing when they're written by fear. And power means nothing when people stop being afraid to speak.